Hey, all board game rancher, we'll find everything solo, tabletop gaming, and more. Here is Teotihuacan, City of Gods. I'm going to go over for you how to play the solo variant, or more precisely, the solo variant rules. This is a doozy, so hang in there with me and let's check this one out. There she blows! This is, I mean, look at it. It's magnificent looking. What does it all mean? And that is where I'll start. I am assuming you've already played this multiplayer and that you already know the basic gist of the game, how it plays, because if you don't and you're like me and you decided to learn the game as well as how the solo, the Teotibot as it's called, works with the game, this is a little game in itself, trying to know what all this means. This is what controls the bot. Here's me. Here's my stuff. Very normal stuff. And then the bot stuff. And then the game stuff. And I spent the first couple games just like, what the hell is going on? What does all this mean? And then, third, fourth, fifth game in, I started kind of get, okay, all right, yeah, okay, I'm getting it. Started getting, understanding a little bit more. And then 6+ games, then you can actually start, well, if you're like me and it takes that long to hang, to get it, I started enjoying the flow of the game. And now I'm, 10+ games in and it just, well, you'll see if it's worth it for you here. You got to put in the work, I would say, though. So when you set up the game, you set it up as a 2-player game, and so I'm playing red. There's all my dice, my worker dice are out there, and they were placed again according to these startup tiles that I chose. And then you've got black is Teotibot. That's going to be the bot, and it always starts on 4, 6, and 8. It starts on the boards 4, 6, and 8, wherever they end up at. Of course, 8 is always in the same spot. And then and they start off with power 2 dice on them. And then your the fourth die is a locked die, and it just stays at power 1, and it always stays on a locked spot. And that is how, and it starts on board number 7 on the decorations board. So that is where Teotibot always starts. And then what you have down here, it's going to start off with a set of resources of each type. And it also starts off with one of the technologies, the marker on the top right technology there. And then you've got this cute little pyramid of actions right here. And then over here, this is going to dictate how these tiles move here in a little bit. I'll show you. Well, very generally what you're going to do is you're going to take the spare dice from, you'll notice the yellow and the blue dice are out there according to 2-player setup. And the leftovers here, you're going to roll these dice on the bot's turn, and that's what's going to determine the action that it takes. So we always go first, and so we do our thing, and you pretty much play, the human player plays just exactly like you would in a multiplayer game. But then when it's the bot's turn, you're going to roll these dice, and depending on what you roll, it's going to determine what action it takes. So when it rolls, a combination, and it rolls, so you roll it, and so it rolled a 7. So what it would take is this top action here, because if it had rolled a 2 or a 3, it would take this action. If it had rolled a 4 or 5, this action. 6, 7, 8, this action. 9 or 10, this action. 11 or 12, this action. It's not going to take this action, and it's not going to take this one that's set aside. These are going to kind of be flowing constantly. So if it took this action, for instance, because it rolled a 7, you do that action, then you take this tile, and you're going to set it off the side. Then you're going to refer to these tiles, and it's going to tell you how the other tiles shift. So it's saying, first you're going to shift this up and to the left, and then you're going to shift this one up and to the right to take its spot. Then this one's going to fill in the bottom. And then you're going to take this top one, you're going to flip it over and slide it under this one. That's going to change up how the tiles move next round or next turn, and then you're going to set this off to the side. And that's how this is basically going to shift depending on what tiles it takes. That's going to happen. And then at the end, after that, you're going to check if the bot has 10 cocoa, it's going to trade those in for 3 victory points. Otherwise, it just keeps what it has. And then you're going to go up here, and the bot always goes last, so you'll slide the eclipse marker up 1, and the bot is done. So That is, sounds pretty straightforward, but what do all these mean? Well, let's get into that now. Well, I lied. Let's first talk about some general things. These things are going to refer to, take the highest powered worker die, take the lowest powered worker die, move up on any temple track, etc. So when it refers to that, it's going to talk, so the highest powered worker die is going to be, you're going to look out here, and right now they're all 2s, right? There's a 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. So if one of these was a 3, obviously that would be your highest power worker die. When everything's tied up though, the highest powered worker die, you're going to start with this board, number 1, and you're going to work your way clockwise, and it'll be the furthest away from that board. So the highest powered worker die in this case with all the ties would be your die that you would use for the action. If it says lowest powered worker die, you're going to take clockwise from here the closest die. So the lowest powered in your breaking ties would be this one right here. This, remember, is a locked die. It is not a worker die, so this doesn't count. So if it says to move up on any temple track, you would move up on what it currently is highest, whatever it's highest on. And then if there's ties there, then you're going to work your way from left to right, from blue, red to green to break the ties. And the bot will get the stuff. So if it moves up, on this track, for instance, you're going to look, it would get a resource, and you're going to look down here, and you want it to basically, you give it the resource it has the least of, and then once there's ties, it's going to take gold first, and then stone, and then wood. So if this, for instance, had moved up, and it was to collect 1 resource, these are all tied, it would take a gold. This is easy enough. When this track moves up, you're going to get those victory points. When this one moves up, it's going to get cocoa. It's not going to, as it revolves around the board, you don't have to worry about where it lands and, oh, I got to pay cocoa. The bot only uses cocoa to score those points, like I mentioned. It also will use it to get mask tiles. It will spend cocoa to purchase mask tiles as needed. So what's the other stuff that it has? Well, let's see here. Why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about these tiles and what they do. So you can see, I just tore apart that beautiful little pyramid, and I've kind of got these sectioned out. There's 7 different actions it can take, and these 3 all kind of work in a similar fashion. This is sort of a close second. This sort of ties them all together. These 2 are like in little La La Land over there. I'll get to those. So if you roll the dice, and then through the selection, you end up taking one of these actions, they all work similar in that first, you'll check to see if the bot has a worker die on this space and it has the resources to spend, it will do it and it'll take the main action. If it doesn't, then you're going to check this board. And if it has a worker die on that board, it's going to collect those resources. Same here. If it's got a worker on that space and it has 2 wood, it's going to spend them and take an action. If it doesn't, you're going to check. This is basically the wood collection action. You're going to check that board, and if it's got a worker there, it's going to collect 2 wood. So here it's going to spend 2 gold, or it's going to collect 2 gold. So that's the way these work. Now, for instance, let's say this is our action. That's the pyramid building action. So you look at board 8. Board 8 has a worker die on it. Now, worker die is different than the lock die. Lock die does not count for any of this stuff. Keep that in mind. But in this case, as an example, it would take the action. So it's got a worker there. Check. It has 2 stone. Yes. So it would spend these 2 stone, and then it would take the pyramid building action, which very generally you take this left one, and you can just do whatever you want. You can spin it. You're going to put it randomly up here on the lowest level that it can, from top left and working your way reading style. So it would place the first one here, and then if that space wasn't available, it would go here, and then it would go here, and then we go here, and then it'd go up to the next level and start working its way across. At least that's the way I understand it and I play it. So this, you just kind of spin it. You don't worry about matching symbols or any of that stuff. You just put it in there randomly. Then you're going to score for the bot. So you're going to score based on what level you put it on, just like it has on the board here. So it's on the bottom level of the pyramid. You're going to score 1 victory point. And you'll keep track of that over there. And then the other way this works is it gets an automatic 2 more victory points, plus it gets to move up on any temple track. Remember when I said any temple track, you look to see what it's highest on, and then if it's tied, you work your way from left to right. So in that case, it would move up 1 on the blue track. And that's how it kind of just averages out the score that you would normally get by matching symbols, etc., and possibly, matching a colored symbol and getting to move up on the temple track. And then lastly, it would move up 1 on the pyramid track. And then you're done. Then these slide over, and you would draw a new tile, put it there. And then when it takes an action successfully, in this case, that would be a successful action. You'd power up the die by 1, and then you advance it. And depending on whatever level you just powered up to, if it's 1 to 3, you advance it 1 space. If you had powered it up to 4, then it would go 2 spaces. So instead, it would end up over here. 4 through 5, of course. And if it powers up to 6, it would ascend like normal. But right now, at the end of that action, it would have powered up to 3 and moved over there. And that's how the bot is going to be rotating its dice around. Very, very similar to a player. And so let's get this back to 2. So again, it took and placed that leftmost one. It scored a point for its level that it placed the tile on. It got 2 more points. It got to move up on on any temple. Again, the highest, and then starting from left to right. And then it gets the stuff for that. And then it moved up on the pyramid track. Very much just like you would. So that is this action. And again, if it didn't have any of that possibility, you'd look on board number 3. And if it had a worker die there, it would simply collect 2 stone. Now, let's say it couldn't do any of that stuff. Then what it does is sort of when it fails both those things, say it was supposed to take this action, it couldn't do any of that because it didn't have the die on the right things or didn't have any resources. Then what it does is simply gets 5 cocoa. And then you take the lowest powered worker and you power it up by 1 and advance it. So again, this is where you would look and you take the lowest. If there's a tie, you get clockwise closest to the palace action. That would be this one. It would power up to 3 in this case, and it would move 1 space. And that would be if these actions failed. It would get to do that. Otherwise, as I said, you would just take the appropriate border that it took the action on, power up the die, and advance it. So that's the way this works. Now, if it took this is the noble action. Let's say it rolled this one. Now you'd look, and if it had where is the noble action? Number 6. Where are you? I'm probably staring right at there. It is. So it does. So in this case, you'd check, and yep, lo and behold, it's got a die there, and it has 2 wood to spend. So you'd spend those 2 wood, and then depending on what round you're in, or basically before you reach the first eclipse, you start putting the houses for the bot from left to right. And then after the first eclipse, you put from here left to right, and then on the final round, you put them left to right here. You always just spend the same 2 wood, and it just gets to, based on where you're at in the game, it's going to put those houses, it's going to score those points, and it's going to move up on, it's going to advance up 1 on the Avenue of the Dead track, just like you would, and that would be its successful action for this tile. And again, if it couldn't, then it would just collect 2 wood if it was there. And if it couldn't do either one of those things, that fails that action, it would get the 5 cocoa, and you would take the lowest powered worker, powered up by 1, and advance it. This would work the similar way. This is the decorations tile. So again, you check to see if it had a worker, and again, a worker. So this doesn't count. This is a locked die. So it would not take that action. If it rolled and was supposed to take this action, that locked worker doesn't count. So it would bounce over here and check to see, oh, do I have a worker on board number 4? I do. It would get 2 gold in that case. But let's say it did have a worker on board number 7. It would spend the 2 gold if it had it. And then what it would do is take this decoration, the top one, and then you start placing them clockwise from low to high is how I understand it. So it would take that first decoration tile, it would put it here. And then it just gets 5 points. So you'd scored 5 points over there. Then you come down here, you'd move up 1 on the temple track, the pyramid track, and then it would get to go up on any temple track. So again, if it successfully gets to take this action, which is this guy right here, spends the 2 gold and decoration tile, place it clockwise, kind of winding your way up, and then get 5 points, move up on that track, move up on the temple track. And then again, you would power up the die by 1 and advance it depending on what level it is. So that is this action. And then you would fill up. So then you would just scooch these, you'd scooch them up, and you'd put that one on the bottom. So that's how these rotate. These kind of rotate up as the bot selects them. This rotates to the left as the bot selects pyramid tiles. So that's these actions. Now you get to this one, and this one is it's similar. So if it lands on this action, it's saying, okay, take a look at the alchemy board, and if it has a worker on there, then it would spend 1 gold, and it would place a token on the cheapest, basically the cheapest, or from left to right, high to low, technology tile that it doesn't already have a token on. So it would go, and that you don't have a token on. So if I had a token here, it would place its token right there. But if I didn't have that token there, it would place it right here. It tries to avoid giving you any points, basically, until it has no choice. So you just kind of keep filling these up with the black tokens until it's all loaded up. I've never had it get all loaded up, but and it tries to avoid any place where you already have a token. So you'd spend the gold, you'd place your token on there, and then you would go up on the temple track according to where you put its token, just the same way as you would if you were the player. So that is this action. And if this one fails, say you don't have a worker on there, or you did and you didn't have a gold to spend, then the fallback action here is just you take its lowest powered worker and you level it up 2 times, and you don't advance it. You just level it up 2 times and you're done. So that's the fallback action, as opposed to here where it has the option of collecting resources. This one, you just, if this doesn't work, power up your lowest powered one 2 times and you're done. So now here's this one can get you until you kind of really understand it. This one, if you do this action, it's going to ask you to find your highest powered worker die. So you go out on the board and you look for your highest powered worker die, and we discussed tiebreakers there. Now, depending on where your highest powered worker die is, you're going to do one of these actions up here, basically, is the way to look at it. So if your highest powered worker die is on one of the gold or stone or wood collecting boards, that is boards number 2, 3, or 4, it's just going to collect 2 of that appropriate resource. If it is on one of the other boards, that is on boards 5, 6, 7, or 8, it's going to try to do the main action if it has the resources to spend. So that is how this works. It just depends on where your highest powered die is, and then you're either going to take the main action of these tiles, depending on what board it's on, or you're just going to collect resources, depending on the board that it's on. And if it can't do that, and that's where you stop. It's just going to, like, say your highest powered die was on this board, and it didn't have 2 stone to spend, then you go to your next highest powered die. It wouldn't move on, for instance, and just collect 2 stone, I guess is what I'm getting at. So this one differs in that, you go from highest power to see if it'll do the one action that it's supposed to. If it doesn't, then it moves on to the next highest power die and on until it can finally do one of those things that I just described. And if all that fails, which is pretty unlikely, then you just do the fail action again. You get 5 cocoa, then you go up and you'd find your lowest powered die and level it up and advance it. And so that's how this tile works. Okay, and lastly, or not lastly, but now we got the mask tile here, and we got this lock tile here, and what these mean is it's going to go up and it's going to look, you just basically look at all the discovery tiles that are available on the palace board and all the other boards. So here and here and here and there. And you look for masks. And it wants to collect masks that it doesn't have, and it wants to collect, if there's a tie, then it wants to collect the one with the lowest value there because they're the most rare, and it does have to pay the resources for them. So it would just basically here, there's a mask tile there, and there's another mask tile here. They're both level 2s, and they both cost the same. So if there's a tiebreaker there, then it's going to take the one closest to the palace board going clockwise. So it would take this, would pay the resources, and it would just take it. And then you replace it with a new discovery tile. And if there are no masks out there to take, or it can't afford to take one, then it's going to take that fail action. It's going to take the 5 cocoa, and it's just going to go out and look for the lowest worker die to power up by 1 and advance. And that is the mask action. And this one's pretty straightforward. You're just going to go, you're going to find your locked die. This one, the power never changes. It's going to stay at 1. It's going to go to the next available board clockwise, and it's going to do its temple action 2 times. So it's going to get to move up twice on the blue temple in this case. And then each time it does, it's going to get resources, and you have to kind of do what I was saying. You want it to gather up the resources it has the least of. And then it's going to do away with the discovery tile, discard that, and draw a new one. And then it's done. Now, if you happen to be there, if I happen to already be there, then it would just boot me right off. And then, boom, my worker's free. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you ever boot the bot off of a locked space, it just moves to the next clockwise. It doesn't become a free worker. It just moves. It always stays a locked worker. So always keep that in mind. So again, when it takes this action, you rotate it clockwise to the next space. You move it up 2 times on its corresponding temple track, and you discard the discovery tile and replace it. If it gets all the way back around to here, it actually is going to move up 3 times on any temple. And again, that's going to be typically where it's highest. It's going to move up 3 times on that track. And so that's a bit of a doozy when it gets around to that one again. And then it would discard and replace the discovery tile. So that is the key action. So that's all the actions there. And something to keep in mind, it can ascend just like you can. So if ever you have a powered up die and it hits 6 for the bot, you're going to ascend like normal, and you're going to move up on the Avenue of the Dead track. And then it always takes the collect 5 victory points as its bonus. So you're going to move up 5 on the victory point track there. And then it's going to scooch 1 more space towards the eclipse, just like normal. And then you're going to take that die and you're going to make it a 1. So let's say this had advanced all the way up to 6. It ascends. Yay! You put it at 1. This moves up the track. You score 5 points. You put this here, but you advance this die 1 space. So there's not going to be any bot die lingering on the palace board ever. When it ascends, it sits there for a second as you advance it the 1 space. Now, also too, this board is always skipped when you're advancing workers. So if you were right here, let's say this was, I said from 1 to 3, it advances 1 board. If ever it's like 4 or 5, it's going to advance 2 spaces. So let's say you just took this action, and now you're supposed to power the worker up to 4. Now it's going to move 2 spaces. 1. Not going to stay here. It's going to skip it. So it would actually end up going there. So keep that in mind. This board is always skipped. And lastly, for scoring, you're going to be going back and forth. You're going to score just like normal on this whole thing. It doesn't have to feed its workers, so keep in mind you're not going to be feeding bot workers after. It will score on the Avenue of the Dead track like normal. It will score for its masks. It will score like normal as it competes with you on the pyramid tracker there, and then at the end of the game, after the final eclipse. Oh, and another thing worth noting: these tiles, it never messes with the discovery tiles. So as it goes up, it's just gonna land on them, but it's not gonna take any. And even too, when it rolls this, where it has to collect a mask, it does not take into account any of these discovery tiles out on the temple or any of the tracks like that. It only does it on the 4 boards. This one, and then or I should say, was that 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's 5 total boards. So, anything else? Yes. So as it advances on here, by the way, so if it got there, it wouldn't touch this. it would just simply take a cocoa for reaching that space. And if ever at the end of the game, if it reaches one of these final bonus tile spaces, it's just going to score a flat 15 points. It'll keep scoring as it goes up or collecting cocoa and etc. But once it reaches there, it's just going to collect a flat 15 points at the end of the game for each one that it gets here or past. So that's how it's going to score the bonus tiles. You'll score as normal for each individual one. And then lastly, for any cocoa it has left, so anything less than 10, basically, because any 10, it would have traded in for 3 points. Any cocoa that it has left is going to count for 1 point, and any resources it has left, it's going to count for 1 point. So it can get a little bundle of points there at the end of the game that you're going to want to watch out for. And I think that's it. So there you have it. That is how you play this game solo. I do plan on doing a playthrough of this, which if I've done it already, you'll see a little eye up there. And you can hit that to see this all in action. If it's not there, then I haven't done it yet. And also, too, I do typically, I always do now, a monthly MVP where I talk about my most voraciously played games, and this will probably be in one of those. I might put a link on that too, as I kind of do this loose leaf sort of review style on the games that I've been playing currently. So there you have it, Teotihuacan, City of Gods, how to play solo. Whew, might go throw back a cold one after that. Thanks for watching on Board Game Days. Bye bye.